Welcome to the Blender Workshop presented by Jaybots 16700. Our goals and plans for today is to teach you how to export and import CAD files from your software. Today, we're going to assume you're using Onshape, so that's what I'm going to show you, and all the way into Blender. And then we're going to teach you how to texture your robot to make it look something like this, with metallic and reflections and the right colors. And I'm also going to be teaching how to prepare the robot for animation and how to actually animate your robot simply. And we will also be showing how to render your first image in animation. I'll also be showing some things that work and some things that don't in Blender. It depends on encoder settings. And I've also allotted an hour extra after the workshop for any questions that aren't answered through the workshop itself. In Blender, we're going to be doing these three main things that I said earlier: shading, animation, and rendering. So first off, shading does this. So you can turn it from a normal CAD file like this down to something more realistic looking down here, like aluminum. And then here's an example of animation. It's just going up and it drops the file. Before we get started with actually getting into the Blender, does everybody have it downloaded? All right, I'm seeing thumbs up. So first, did you also download the other thing I was sent, the Blender for FTC? All right. So I'm going to first talk about Blender for FTC, then we'll get into Blender. So what Blender for FTC does, it's a really good, really awesome add-on for Blender that has a material library. It comes with about, I think, 40 different materials that you can just drop onto your objects in Blender. And it also has a field preset that actually, so instead of having to get textures for the field, it just already has it. But the only problem with the Blender for FTC, it was made 5 years ago, so it hasn't been updated. So you have to go to AndyMark and upload the files yourself. We'll be showing how to do that as well. AndyMark has all the files in the links. And there's also material customization. So alongside the material library, with the materials that are already in the add-on, you also have an option to customize it. I will show that as well. Like you can change the colors, reflection, and how metallic it looks. So let me open up Blender now. Let me present something else. All right, here we go. So this is Blender. I already imported the box. It takes a minute for it to import, but I will show you how to do it in Onshape. So you open up your Onshape file, and if you go to your robot, you will see you have your robot here, and if it loaded, then you right click down here where on the name, click export, and then it brings a pop-up like this, export. You can name it whatever. You can name like your team number and the robot. And then the format, we will be using Collada because it loads generally quicker than all the other ones, like object. It takes a lot longer. It sometimes doesn't even load. And the good thing about Collada, it also brings in simple colors like blue and red on here. It'll bring that in. And then you just press export. I will be pressing cancel just because I already have it downloaded. So it takes about a few minutes for it to export. So you'll have to wait for that. But for now, I'll show you the Blender file. In Blender, you have your robot. Generally, it does do this for some reason. What you can just do is you can just highlight all of it. You hit this side over here on the sidebar, you have all your tools. This is for movement, rotate, scale in, and transform just does all of it at once without having to change between them. And if you want to get, when rotating, if you want to get like more exact numbers, click on the bottom left, click down here, click on the where it says angle, and do a simple 90 degrees to get it standing right up like this. Pretty simple. And so for the robot for shading, Blender for FTC right here. Usually it has nothing here, but you just click the import default material lib, and it'll load in all the materials that you need. It has all 3D printed textures, as metal, it has all other stuff like the rubber, plywood, carbon fiber, Gobilda servo textures. So really, all you have to do is click on an object you want to materialize, click on the material on here, and press assign. And you can't see it yet, but you have to click on render first as well. Go to the render engine. We'll be using cycles because Blender for FTC was built for cycles. While it does work for Eevee, it's not really the best. It doesn't give you the super realistic renderings as cycles does. In my case, because I have a GPU, I'll be pressing that. It does it generally faster. So if you click on viewport shading, you can see it already looks gray. While it doesn't look super metallic, you can see the cuts have on it like aluminum does. But if you were to click on this button over here, viewport shading, the second one, the Foley one, it'll give me like a sample viewport. And while at the moment you can't really see much, if we move the light in, generally it's all the way up here. If we move the light in a little bit, you can see it's a little more reflective, although it's not very noticeable as there's no background here. Alongside for Blender for FTC, as I mentioned, it comes with a field. So you can just click make field, and it shows up a whole field right here for you. It'll just load it in. Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, it doesn't come with the actual field elements. So you have to go to AndyMark and go to the first tech challenge into the deep items. And then instead of having to buy it, obviously, because it's in Blender, you scroll all the way down. And you go to the documents, and then the CAD file is right here. You can just download it and import it. But I already have a file with that. But for now, we'll be going to the shader part first before we go to the actual field. So I will be undoing that. Oh, my Blender file just okay. Decided to quit. It's my Blender. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'll just be hiding everything else real quick. All right. And now that we have our robot, as you can see, all these little like lines here, these dotted lines are all the connections between this. It'll move the whole robot. We don't want to see that because it's quite annoying. So what we can do is click up here and click on relationship lines, and it just makes them disappear for now. If you'd like to see them again, you can just click back on it. But so what we'll do here is we'll grab this. If you want to see how the nodes work, how the shading actually works, you can click on here and on this button. Oh, Tristan left. And then this will show you all the nodes. We don't have to look at this for now. There is an easy way, because we did it from Onshape and Collada, all these objects have connected materials. As you can see right here, it says there are 319 users that have the same data. So what we can just do to make this simpler, instead of having to click on each one and press assign. We can click on one, go to Shaden, go back to here. Okay. Let me assign real quick. Shaden. We can just copy this, click on another object that has similar thing, like right here. Want to delete this. It'll turn it all black because there's no output or no materials. You just paste it in, and then all of it becomes metal. And if you don't want to use what it already has built in, we can just delete this. We can add in a node called metallic BSDF. You connect BSDF to surface, and it'll automatically do metallic. But the difference between this, just normal metallic, and the aluminum that comes with the Blender for FTC is this one has some texture to it. If you don't like that, however, just do metallic BSDF, and then you can change the color to whatever you'd like a darker color. You can change the edge tint as well here. And if you want just a different color entirely, you can also do that. As you can see here, so it looks grayish, but it also has a purple tint to it. And if you want it to be less reflective, so we click here. You can just click on the roughness and make it less reflective. And if you want more reflective, you can just lower the roughness. So as you can see here, it's fully reflective. So as above is a C channel, you can see down here, it's reflecting it. As there's not much light, it doesn't reflect as much. But yeah, it's pretty much how shading works. There's not much to it. There's a lot of materials online and a lot of tutorials how it shows you to do it, but this is just the simple stuff for Blender. We just need the metal, so we can just do metallic BSDF with the base color and edge tint for now. We'll keep that normal at a white tint and base color of a gray. Now everything looks metallic and very reflective, which is what we want for now. If not, you can just keep this and go into here. You can lower the effect. But so to prepare the CAD file for animating, as there's a lot to do, because as you can see here, every single thing is separated here. So if you move one, nothing else moves together. So what you want to do is click on Add, or you can also do Shift A. You click on Empty. Go to any of these. Any of them work, but I usually do Plane Axis. I try to line it up in the middle. And then I click on this one and this one. If I click and then shift click on two objects and then a third one, the plane axis, I can right click, go down to parent, click on make parent without inverse, keep transform. This will avoid the object just moving randomly back to origin, because the relationship lines make it so that it's stuck there whenever it was imported in. But if we undo that, and then if we click on make parent without inverse, keep transform, it'll keep the transform, meaning it'll keep its place in the Blender file. And then if you were just to click on just the parent, which is in this case the empty plane axis, you can just move that and it moves both of them at the same time together. So you can do that with all of them. For example, if you want to do like the whole, see the gripper here? If we grab this and we just grab all that and then click on this on the plane axis, if we hold shift click and drag all over it, it'll select all. And then you want to make sure you have this as your active object. You'll know when it's active when it's a brighter color than the rest. So the active one is currently the axis. So we parent it again by going back down to make parent without inverse with right clicking. And then if we were to just move the axis again, it'll move everything plus the gripper right here. So these are, well, at first tedious to set up because you'll have to go into like each single thing right here. It helps the animation process by a lot because instead of having to every single time having to click on this and then animating that together, you can just click on one thing and it moves this together. And because the Go Builder and Ref files come with a lot of excess stuff, like if you look into here, I'm going to go into the solid mode. If you look here, these ball bearings, they're all individually filed. So if that happens, you can just delete that. You won't be able to see that. But if you do want to keep it, you can. You can just click all of them and parent them together. But some things are unnecessary. You can just delete them because they're not super visible, as you can see. Same thing with the wheels down here. These wheels are all individually imported, so every single object is individual. So what you can just do is look up from a top view, drag all over. If you click right click, then parent, make parent without inverse, keep transform again. It'll keep that. And you can just click on, I don't even know which one is a parent. I forgot to give it. If you grab a empty circle, this one's better for wheels as it's just a flat circle. But as you can see, it's big. So we would go back over here, scale. We're going to scale it down to about the size of the wheel. And then we will click on the rotate button, rotate it to about 90 degrees. And then we'll click back to move and bring it over here. If in our case, if this is in the way, you can just click on it and you can look for it in here. Or if you see the object is called outside 0.04, you can also just search it up right here and click hide for now. That way it's not in your way and you can click around it. So what you want, usually you can do is just line it up with the center here. You can also, up here, it'll give you a flat surface. So you can line it up exactly as you'd like on a flat surface. And then you can bring it in. And then you select everything together. Then you want to right click, parent, make parent without inverse, and keep transform. And then you got the empty. Unfortunately, I didn't keep this bigger than the wheel. It's better to keep bigger than the wheel so you can actually see it like that. So if we were to select all again, right click, parent, keep parent without inverse, keep transform. And then if you only click on the wheel, it'll move the whole wheel. Sorry, if you only click on the circle, the whole wheel will move. And you can rotate it like this now. So now that we have prepared the wheel to animate, we'll bring it to the side and we'll do a quick little tutorial on how to animate something super simply, and then we'll go on a little more complicated stuff, such as how to do this whole linear extension like this. Ours is more complicated as we have an axis here, as it has to go up and down. Some robots are more complicated, some are less. It's very much on needs, and if you have any questions, we can answer that later, and you can also email us later. For now, we'll do the wheel. So down here, you have your timeline. This is where all your keyframes will go. And thanks to Blender, it automatically, when you rotate something, if you have 2 keyframes, it'll automatically do everything instead of how in drawing you have to do every single frame. Blender will fill in the frames on its own, the quickest way possible. So what we will do is we'll click on rotate. We will rotate it. Let's say, actually, before we do rotate it, we're gonna go to make sure we're on 0 or 1. Click on our circle. Click I, which sets a keyframe here. It's automatically keybind like that. And if not, you can just right click and press insert keyframes. And then we'll go to about 24. As in animation in Blender, it's defaulted to 24 frames per second. What that means is for every 24 frames, 1 second passes. So if you were to do a 240 frame animation, it'll only be 10 seconds. And so what we'll do is now that we're at frame 24, we'll spin this like this, about 360 degrees. And then we'll click I again, and it'll set another keyframe. So what it does now, Blender on its own sets up the wheel and it automatically spins it for you. So as you only rotated it on 2 different frames, you kept it on 1 rotation, rotated it on a different frame, it'll fill in everything else for you. And there are different types of animation. Like if you look here to interpolation mode, there are linear, constant, and Bezier. We don't have to worry about ease and dynamic effects. But for the robots, we want to do linear because it'll be more straightforward. That's how the motors work. Because if not, it'll just be like it'll start spinning slowly, and then go faster and then slow down as it ends. Instead, here it just goes like this. It just stops immediately. And then you can do the same for like rotate it, and then for movement as well. You can just move it there, start a keyframe as this was already framed, and it'll just spin forward. It'll move forward like that. And that is how you do wheels. And because these are mechanism wheels, you don't have to do it, but it does look better if you animate the wheels correctly, as in like when going forward or like when moving rightwards. When you move right, so you know how some wheels like move one direction, the other wheels move in a different direction. When that happens, when it looks better like that, so it looks more realistic. And so now, instead of as I showed you before, all this stuff over here, I already have a file that has all of these pre-connected, just so we can have extra time for other stuff. So I will show you how to animate the linear extension a bit. So I will open up that file real quickly. This file also already has the field elements already on it. So as you can see here, everything's textured, as this has metal and red. For this stuff, I just use the Blender for FTC. As it comes with everything you need, as I said earlier. This is just aluminum, and all this is just red. It was like a red thing. Red hard plastic, yeah, this one. And then, so as you can see here, all these little these empty axes, these are all connected already. So I set up my robot to where the field is in its own collection. To do that, you can just right click on scene collection, new collection, and then you can just drag and click whatever you need into there. But in this case, I animated the robot to where it'll go up. Oh, it doesn't go up. Okay, I lied. I animated that earlier, but I guess it didn't work here. So for let me just select everything and delete everything I have in animation. As you can see here, it's quite annoying to look at all the axes, but you can't really get rid of it without like getting rid of the camera and stuff. So what we can do is there is a tab up here. If you look in the top, there are modeling, sculpting, UV, all these stuff are really useful. But for now, we're just going to worry about animation and layout. Layout is the one we're currently in. You can just see your default layout. Animation, it has a setup like this, tabs, where one is just you can change the viewport shade into solid, material preview, and the render preview. We'll have it on this for now, as it's just the simplest. So here you can move around. You can like move this, and the same thing that happens in the right side happens on the left side. So you can see in lifetime what happens, and this is the camera view. If you want to see how your what it looks like from your camera's point of view, if you have a number pad, you can click on 0, but alternatively, you can also click on view, cameras, and active camera, and it'll bring you to your camera. And as you can see, the gray box out here is what the camera does not see. If you want to see exactly what it looks like in the camera, click like a full screen, just click on view, cameras, and frame camera bounds. Once again, it's view, cameras, active camera, and there's also frame camera bounds after in camera. And you can see how it looks like here. Why is it? Okay. So if we go back to layout, to do a quick animation, it's really not that difficult once you get the hang of it. So we'll grab all 3 of these, move these to the right a little bit. We're going to bring this one back down. That one is slide 1. I label all of them for convenience wise. So if we go here, we'll go back to animation. So let me just turn off relationship lines. If we click on, let me hide this. All right. If you click on the whole for my example, it's called whole linear extension, where all of these slides are individually grouped, and you can group these groups into one group, which it'll allow you to just move the whole thing together. But then if you have a different collection with all the different groups, it'll allow you to move each one individually like this. And you can do things like this. Let me show you. So if you rotate that, and unfortunately, you can move the axis to where it goes from here to over here, and then you can do local, but it's not. Global is simpler to use and more beginner friendly. As you can see here, this isn't lined up right here, so we won't. So as we rotated this, why is the camera move? There we go. I don't know why the camera was moving. But if we click on, as you can see, this rotated. So we also have to rotate the shaft, and I grouped that together. So we can group this, rotate it together, and we'll have to line it up. So there are some things that are just, you have to manually do like this. So if you're to start your robot in a position where in the autonomous, let's say like this. So your autonomous starts like this. Your robot is initialized. You want to set your keyframe to here first. Usually I say about 6 to 8 frames of it standing still before you move it, because if not, it'll immediately start moving. Then we'll go to about 24 frames, which is 1 second after the animation started. And then we'll click on, there are shortcuts to animate it, but we'll click here for now. So we click on rotate the whole linear extension, and we'll move that up up about, I want to do 45-degree angle, and then we'll click on move, bring it up. And because we moved this at a 45-degree angle, we also have to move the shaft to a 45-degree angle to make it lined up. So as you can see, it's lined up, and then because I didn't set this, that is a mistake on my part, I'll revert it back to 45. I set a frame earlier. So if I go here, set that, it'll be perfect like that. And then whole linear extension, we'll do 45-degree again. We'll bring it up and line it up. Well, it doesn't have to be perfect because it's just a demo, but it looks better when perfect. And then, as you can see here, it automatically does it for you. And it'll line up like that. It's quite useful. And then, as I said earlier, instead of having to click on every single one of these individually and having to do the linear extension like that, we can just click on slide 1 and slide 1.1 and click up, and like that. And then, as you can see, as I move it up and that way, into the right, that way, right. Okay. Let me set keyframe here to where it starts, and then we'll move it up to the right. So as it's sliding up. Sorry, just select a different frame when doing this. So if you're on one frame and then you move it and you're still on that frame, but then you move, it'll just revert it back. So what you have to do is click down here to a different frame when changing frames. And then we do your movement, press I again. And then instead of how I moved it up and to the right, Blender automatically figures out that you want it to slide upwards. So that's what it'll do, like that. I'll expand this a little longer so you can see. It's a little easier to see here. On this side, on the right, on the left, it goes up and then it slides instead of having to move up and then right. And I forgot to add the gripper, but luckily just click on the gripper that I have here and then bring it as well. And we'll set it up next to it. And it'll go along with it. Press play. And it goes up. Right. If you can download your CAD files from your Blender, from your wherever you CAD it on, like Onshape,